Hello, welcome back to Toys Thursday. The date is May 28th, 2020, week number 12 of the coronavirus, staying at home, social distancing, and all that good stuff. Today we got a treat for those of you who were a fan of Michael Clark Duncan, the late Michael Clark Duncan. So sad. Such a good actor and a very iconic person, no matter which movie he was cast in. But anyway, let's not dwell on the sad stuff. Today we got in front of you, in front of the camera, action figure of one of the characters that was played by the late Michael Clark Duncan. This here is Manute from the Sin City movie. Actually, Michael Clark Duncan only played Manute in the original Sin City from 2005, and then unfortunately, by the second installment, he's passed away, and it had to be played by someone else. But this action figure here depicts Manute in the first movie, and he is quite a massive action figure. Uh, he actually right up there in the top 10 largest human-sized uh, human type figures in my collection. Now, Michael Clark Duncan was always a big guy, but he was not this big. This action figure is more true to the character that he portrayed. Uh, Michael Clark Duncan, when he was alive, he was about 6 foot 5, 305 pounds. Now, the character Manute that he played in Sin City, uh, no one really know for sure how tall Manute was supposed to be, but if you go by his present in the Sin City comic book, then he has to be somewhere around 7 foot 9. So that would bring him more in line with how this action figure here is portraying uh, the character. Giving you a side view. I have to hold on to him a little bit because unfortunately one of the shortcomings of this particular action figure is he doesn't have a lot of articulation. Not a lot of joints would move. So what you see is pretty much what you get. You can move his head, look up, look down, from side to side. But other than that, you can maybe turn his waist. But as some of you can see, if I turn his waist, then the line on his scalp, on his body, is breaking up. So yeah, you're not going to post him turn to the side because the line is not going to line up. He's just going to look really awful. So waist articulation pretty much useless. You can maybe turn him a tiny bit and it still look okay, but too much is going to break up the line. Uh, you can move his arm, his shoulder, go out, in, up and down. I'm very nervous when I'm maneuvering him because he was made in 2005, and so he is quite an old action figure. And back then, the company that made him, Neca, was known for some breakage issues. He's also got twist at around the bicep area, but this is very pointless because no matter how you swivel his arm, if you swivel out like this, it just look weird. And swivel in, that look unnatural too. So pretty much have to default to the straight arm. There's no bend in his arm. There's no bend in his knee. Actually, from the waist down, it's all one solid lump of plastic. Uh, there's no articulation from the waist down. His wrist, you can also swivel, uh, But yeah, that's about it. If with this action figure, you pretty much are limited to him standing with his arm down or him standing with his arms up pointing forward. But even that, he cannot hold this pose. If I let him go now, yeah, he's going to tip forward just like that. If you have his arms pointing forward, because his legs are so narrow together and his upper torso is so heavy, he's not going to be able to balance unless you have his arm down by his side. Give you a view from the back. Now, unlike a lot of our previous action figure show and tell or reviews, whatever you call it, Toy Thursday, unlike a lot of the previous ones, Manu here is not an action figure that I grew up with. I actually only acquired him last year, and prior to last year, I had no knowledge of this character. Uh, so he was an impulse purchase. He was one of those purchases that I made after watching Sin City and was really kind of impressed by the character. So I searched around and saw that Neca produced an action figure of the character back in 2005. So I looked him up and was able to get a good deal on him because a lot of people really didn't like the way this action figure was made. And as I show you, you can't do much with him. He's uh, very limited posing options, and there's just not a lot you can do to make him look different. So he's not definitely not that fun to play with for kids, and for collectors, I guess he's just not all that important. He's not on anyone's wanted list. Now I know the way I've been talking so far make it sound like I regret my purchase. You know, he was not someone or something I really wanted, and there's no deep emotional connection, etc., etc. And his articulation suck, his posing options suck. Um, yeah, but quite the contrary. I actually quite enjoy this action figure. This was one of the purchases, one of the impulse purchases I made that I actually can say, wow, good call. I'm glad I got him. Because as I say, I always liked uh, Michael Clark Duncan as an actor to begin with. Um, and there's various other reasons we're going to that why I think, for me personally, this was a good action figure. It is a good action figure. Quite often, when I purchase action figures based on movies, I end up disappointed because I grew up first being exposed to superhero action figures, and then things like Thundercat, He-Man, cartoon-based action figures, and comic book-based action figures. So I'm used to my action figures feeling a certain way. There's got to be a certain size and bulk to them that that I expect when I check out an action figure. And then when I take a movie-based action figure, of course they have to look more like regular human proportion. So often, someone who appeared to be really uh, impressive in the movie, Terminator, for example, was a disappointment when I finally got the Terminator action figure in my hand because he just didn't look all that cool, didn't feel all that cool. He just was not didn't feel all that muscular, and yeah, he's bigger than some other action figures, but compared to Batman or Superman and even Spider-Man, you just don't feel that. he is all that muscular or big or bulky. Definitely not a hulking, uh, unstoppable killing machine that one would imagine by listening to how people describe the Terminator or how the movie was described. So, long story short, although that's already pretty long-winded, most of the time when I get exposed to a movie-based action figure, I get disappointed. Well, not this time around. This time, as soon as I opened the box and got this guy in my hand, I was like, wow, just look at the size of this guy. I keep talking about the size of this guy, and I'm going to give you guys a few comparisons just for fun, comparing him against other uh, movie-based action figures, and you guys will know what I'm talking about. We'll start with someone that uh, we all kind of consider to be a big guy. Uh, this is Rambo, played by Sylvester Stallone, and we stand them together, and wow, that's just sad. That's just like really sad. Rambo here, comparing to Manute, is like a midget, barely come up to his chest, and they were actually made to be in the same scale. They were both meant to be in the 7-inch uh, toy line. So there's no differing in scale here. It just, yeah, wow. You look at how wide Manute is comparing to Rambo. Sad, tiny, puny. Okay, let's move on to someone bigger then. This here is the gunslinger played by Idris Elba, who also played Heimdall in the Thor movie. So we all can agree that Idris Elba is supposed to be a big dude. But look at that. Again, midget, sad, tiny, standing in front of Manute. This guy is like a child. Alright, let's comparing him to some seriously big dude, some seriously big guy, and see how they measure up. This here is Lurtz from The Lord of the Ring, one of the Uruk High commanders, played by Australian big guy Lawrence Macker. Now, Lawrence Macker is a giant of a man, but look at this. Again, the top of his head barely come up to Manute's chin. Chinese accent slipping through, sorry. And yeah, like Manute just have to stand here with his arms down, pretty much the only pose you can have him in, and he just towers over, looms over other movie-based action figure. I got one more to show you, and no, I don't have the Terminator today, but he looks pretty sad next to Manute as well. Anyway, but I think we can all agree, those of us who watched the X-Men, the Juggernaut, played by Vinnie Jones, was a massive presence. So how does he stack up to Manute, played by Michael Clark Duncan? Uh, really, really, really sad. Look at that. Again, barely come up to the middle of Manute's chest. So I think you guys got an idea of one of the major reasons why I was very impressed by this action figure, because I was expecting it to be disappointing like all the other movie-based character, but this guy turned out to be massive. Definitely made me feel that the $8 I spent on him was well worth it if just on the quality, the size and the heft of the figure alone. Now Manu here also came with, you can see in his hand, a pair of revolvers. Pow, pow. Put his arm down. And his hat. Yeah, you can take off the hat as well. The hat actually fit on his head really, really good. Unlike a lot of other action figures that keep dropping their equipment. This guy, you put things on him, they stay. Well, until sometimes when he tip over. He also have interchangeable hand that the hands on him right now is for holding the pistol. But he also have hands that are fisted if you want him to be fist fighting. But since his arms are completely straight, there's no point putting fisted hands on him. He can't get into any action poses anyway. Another reason why I was very impressed with this figure was the way his muscles and his build is showing through the suit on his body. As an artist and sculptor myself, I know that getting a realistic sculpt or a semi-realistic sculpt, an impressive sculpt on a naked human torso or a human torso clad in spandex, it's easy. You're just like there's only so many ways you can portray pecs and biceps and stuff like that. You just need to have clean lines and uh, well defined curvatures, and that's okay. But what impressed me more is when action figure makers can make a toy that's dressed in normal clothes, like suits or t-shirts or jacket or something like that. Something that's not easy to show the build, but they can still make the musculature show even in that. That's when, for me, it's very impressive when an action figure is wearing uh, day to day a kind of a more concealing clothes, and yet you can still tell the muscular or curvy or stuff like that underneath. It's a hint of uh, what is underneath that really plays with the imagination. One thing that I find really odd with the proportion of this figure is his arms appear to be too narrow from side to side. Like if you look at him from the side view, he look okay. The nice and wide arm, nice and thick. But if we look at him from front or back, you can see that his arms are strangely narrow, almost like someone took a pair of heavy plates and squashed his arms in so they are more flat than how regular arms supposed to be. It's really weird. That's one of my biggest complaints about this detail on this action figure. Now, when you buy an action figure and you actually hold it in your hand, the weight of the figure will make you feel sometimes like if it on those vinyl action figures, you'll feel, wow, this is so light. Did I just pay so much money for something that's not really all that heavy? But on something like Manute here, he is, I would say he's like a pound, and that's really impressive for a human style figure. If I take him off and just drop him lightly on the microwave here, here, like he's just solid, really, really solid. So he's bigger, more detailed and heavier than a lot of other action figures. Definitely most of the movie-based action figures and even a lot of the superhero action figures uh, standing next to him, they just get dwarfed by this guy. So I would say for sheer presence alone on the shelf, for his ability to look impressive uh, without being posed in any kind of dynamic poses, and for the tactile uh, details on this action figure, the weight, the details on his suit, his muscles, his clothing, all add together to this is a very satisfying action figure to have in my personal collection. And of course, because he's Michael Clark Duncan. Thank you for checking out today's Toy Thursday. We'll be back again tomorrow for a Fitness Friday. For now, be safe, be strong. Ciao.